This series was made possible thanks to the generosity of these patrons and from the likes and watch time of viewers like you. Thank you for your support.
Read the disclaimers, and please use common sense.
Over the past few years, it feels as though Transformers, as a franchise, has been stagnating a bit. From a reluctance to abandon certain themes and settings, to a constant reliance and reuse of certain characters, plot points, characterizations, and voice actors, it's all been a bit stale until recently, because the newest Transformers TV show, Earthspark, seems more than determined to make a change. Or rather, make several changes, and I couldn't be more happy about that. Salutations, denizens of the internet, I'm Firebite27, and let's commence our analysis of Transformers Earthspark Deluxe Class Twitch. When the first trailer for Transformers Earthspark was released, I was initially very skeptical, mostly because of the character designs. I didn't like how they looked in the promotional stills, and the animation on display in the trailer wasn't really changing my opinion.
That
Optimus.
is loud and ugly.
Fortunately, watching the actual show changed that opinion eventually. However, that wasn't the only reason I was skeptical. And because the next few lines will include a few spoilers for the end of Earthspark Season 1A, please skip ahead a few seconds to the timestamp I've listed below, because there'll be some important ones here, but I'll only cover them briefly. Because when I saw Twitch, one of 5 new characters belonging to the Terran subgroup of Transformers, Terrans are just Transformers created from Earth's water, by the way. Please don't ask me how that works. When I saw that she was going to turn into a drone, well, my skepticism shot up through the roof with such great speed that I'm honestly surprised that it didn't cause any permanent structural damage to our residence hall. My skepticism came down to 2 major problems. First and foremost, have you seen what a drone looks like? I think it's fair to say that most of them are not shaped in a way that is conducive to being turned into a humanoid robot. Then again, I guess that's a problem that Transformer vehicle modes have been faced with since time immemorial. In it. And the second reason is that there haven't really been any drone Transformers before Twitch. The only ones I can think of are this thing which claimed to be Soundwave and a bot. Actually, is there a bot that turns into a drone? I could have sworn there was one, and when I checked on TF Wiki there wasn't one, and I'm kind of feeling weirded out about that. Am I just experiencing the Mandela effect? Also, real quick, where's Potbot Season 2? I'm getting really worried that I'll have to make the butt of some terribly uninspired joke about how quickly Hasbro cans their TV shows.
You don't make sense in this context.
To put it into perspective, we've had more boat Transformers than we've had drone Transformers. And there are so few of those that I can pretty much count them on my fingers. In fact, the only figure on screen right now that I'm even certain is a boat is Broadside. And all of those problems happen before we get to the toy itself, which has some new baggage to deal with. Mostly because it is a Transformer of a female character. And those have had a rough track record, we'll say. And no matter the figure's overall quality, whenever a female Transformer comes out, there always seems to be at least one problem that people will use as an excuse to dogpile on it. Whether it be fragility, the over-reliance on a backpack, faux parts, or parts forming, or just being overall not fun to transform. And when more than one of these apparent sins is committed, well, let's just say Earthrise RC sends her regards. More often often than not, it seems as though fembots end up comically exaggerating the compromises most normal Transformers need to make in order to get a car to turn into a robot with humanoid proportions, to the point where they stop being compromises and start being problems. And since Earthspark Twitch is a female Transformer, that begs the question, what compromise did she make? Well, in drone mode, I can say without any doubt whatsoever that the big compromise here was show accuracy. The thing is supposed to be shorter overall, there's not supposed to be any gunmetal here on the back 2/3 of the vehicle mode. This isn't supposed to be sticking out quite as far, and also, the little antenna here is supposed to be both longer and black, and also there's supposed to be some extra vents here on the side. The back should also be way more cohesive, and on top of that, the VTOL engines are not only thinner than they are in the show, but they also don't have her glowy orbs of plasma, though considering that's pretty much physically impossible to achieve on a toy, I'm gonna let that one slide. And the gun isn't supposed to be underneath her chin. And on top of the lack of accuracy, there are some actual issues, like how the stand port is incredibly difficult to access, mostly because they decided to design these little drone legs to fold forwards instead of backwards, which would have allowed them to open up access to the stand port. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can't display it on a flight stand, however, it means that you need a special kind of flight stand, and it's the kind that I usually use in these reviews, but
キラークイーンはすでにドアノブに触っている。
The best of 2022 list gave me a new reason to hate Legacy Skids while I was filming the Why Are You Running bit. And a big part of why this is so disappointing to me specifically is because flying is a huge part of Twitch's personality. She's a free-spirited child who wants to explore the world, and not being able to express that part of her personality is kind of a bummer. How does a fucking car have better flight stand compatibility than a drone?
Cars? Cars?
The final issue with the drone mode you can consider to just be a personal nitpick of mine, but I find that the weapon storage is junk. You're supposed to shove the gun underneath the drone, but the shoulders from the robot mode just push up against and make it feel as though it's not supposed to be there. I don't know, it just doesn't feel right there, and it feels like a hassle to get it in there, even though it never takes me longer than like 5 seconds tops. And I don't really like how it feels to get it in there. So that's it. A shut and done case where 3 issues overwhelmed this drone mode and end up ruining it for me altogether. Except, no, that's not how this works. I do think that these are issues, however, I do think there are also reasons that I can excuse these issues. We'll go in reverse order. Yes, I dislike where the arm gun goes in drone mode, but I honestly can't think of a better solution. Sure, it could go on the back, however, that would require the removal of not only the 5mm peg that allows Twitch to hold it, but also the gun barrel, and I don't want to sacrifice this beautiful orange paint in the gun barrel. Its storage spot could be swapped to the back of the drone mode's underside, however, there's already a lot of stuff there, and I can't see them incorporating a storage method with the space available. Plus, I don't know if shifting its placement would have affected the balance of the drone mode, and considering how tiny the drone legs are, I think it's for the best that it just remains under the chin. Granted, I think they should have thought out the spacing a bit more, but I ultimately can forgive it. As a rebuttal to my second issue, while yes, it does stink that they goofed up the stand port integration, it's not like this is the end of the world. If Jetformers can get a pass for not having stand ports all the time, then it would be ridiculous to deny the same luxury to the very first drone figure in all of Transformers. And like I said earlier, it doesn't mean that you can't display the drone mode on a figure stand, it just means that you need a specific kind of figure stand to display it. And while it does suck that the figure doesn't look exactly like the character from the show, I can forgive it for a few reasons. First and foremost, this figure's carrying around a lot of signs that read, "I am the very first blank ever." The list includes being one of the very first Earthspark Deluxes, one of the very first drone Transformers in at least a decade, the very first Transformer to attempt a domestic drone as an alt mode, and on top of that, this is the first figure of Twitch. Oh, I say, this is most unprecedented. If history has taught us anything about Transformers, their first toys are rarely their most accurate. Second of all, compromises to the vehicle mode, whether they be accuracy related or not, often result in a better robot mode. or at least one that's more satisfying. For example, yes, Legacy Motormaster has a comically oversized truck cab and a comically undersized truck bed. However, it doesn't affect the steering on the truck mode, it actually allows for a proportionate combined mode chest, and most of the time you won't even notice because the trailer is going to be covering up the truck bed. Third factor, I'm kind of indifferent to the concept of cartoon accuracy. Sure, it can be included in a figure as a feature, but it's not one that I feel the need to score objectively, or at least drag up every 10 seconds like other reviewers do. In short, while including accuracy is fine, it's equally fine if it isn't included. It's not some be-all, end-all ideal that every figure should strive toward. And the inaccuracy is actually justified in-universe by the fact that these are child Cybertronians. They haven't figured out transformation to the extent that, say, Optimus or Bumblebee have. In fact, there's an entire episode of Transformers Earthspark dedicated to the fact that they haven't figured out transforming yet. It's also an episode that does a much better job of showing Bumblebee's struggle to become a mentor figure to two young Cybertronians than RID 2015, which is awesome. And it really makes it a shame that some people will refuse to watch the show just because Bumblebee is in it and they haven't gotten over their childish distaste for the fact that Bumblebee is in everything. You know who you are! And then we have the fourth reason why I can forgive it. The fact that I literally did not notice how inaccurate it was until a week and a half after I had gotten it and I had started writing the script.
Oh dear God, I think I've gone cross-eyed.
It will be easier to show how exactly the figure tricked me in robot mode, but what it essentially boils down to is that the figure has prioritized and emphasized the defining features of the show model in each mode. Now, despite the fact that I might have come across as a bit of an apologist for this figure over the past 3 to 5 minutes, because let's face it, that's basically what I've been during this problem segment. Unfortunately, even an apologist such as myself can't overlook how many gaps are on the drone mode. And it's not 1 or 2 minor gaps. The drone mode is basically 30 to 40% gap. Now, subjectively, I don't see the gaps as a problem. However, they are an objective problem. They ruin the cohesion of the alternate mode. However, there are reasons I can forgive it. And I've already stated them all, so I'm not going to restate them. And so now all there is to do is to just go over the size comparison. Here's Earthspark Twitch next to my last review, firm hand, fellow fembots, BRC, Alita 1, RC6, Lifeline. What do you mean I transformed it wrong? That thing didn't even know how to transform in the first place! Override and Road Rocket, Masterpiece Reboost, HasLab Starsaber, HasLab Victory Leo, the HasLab Midget Masters, Evolution Leo Prime, the Earthspark Tacticons, Earthspark Deluxe Megatron, and of course, a standard Qtama, standard can of sparkling water, and Broadside. So that's the drone mode. I won't say that it's perfect. There are a lot of gaps, and like I said, there is a lot of inaccuracy to the show. However, there is one more reason that I think the inaccuracy works in this figure's favor. However, in order to talk about it, we need to get to the robot mode. Twitch's transformation is interesting, in that it evades many of the pitfalls other fembots fall into, such as having no clear start and stop points or not enough locking mechanisms to keep everything in place. There's no shoving the legs into a bizarre yoga pose and hoping for the best.
Ah yes, the RC mold once more regales us with its world-famous downward-facing spiral pose.
It's just tab feet onto hips. Make sure that chest plate slides over tabs on the feet. It's all very simple and very fun to do. And most importantly, it doesn't rely on a backpack, which is apparently considered lazy for some reason. And yet Studio Series Deluxes get off scot-free. Try wrapping your head around that one. And in the transition between drone and robot, the figure has gone from what I could have charitably called between 30 and 50% accurate to the show model, to what I can confidently call between 80 and 90% accurate to the show. Granted, 80 to 90% still isn't 100%, but again, I didn't notice this for a week and a half. So for the time being, let's focus on a few minor issues I have with the robot mode. For starters, no wrist swivels. This is understandable, it's a relatively cheap deluxe, but it would have been nice to have them included. My second issue is the paint. Yeah, it goes where it's needed, but it doesn't go to everywhere where it is needed. For example, the entirety of the kneecaps should be painted in gunmetal, however, only a third of them are painted in gunmetal. The fingers should also be painted in gunmetal. Then we get to the head, where there's a ton of gunmetal paint missing. Specifically on her head pin and the little, I don't know what you would call these, really low earmuffs. They aren't painted in gunmetal, and they should be. However, the fact that they aren't painted in gunmetal is fine because, as I mentioned earlier, budget, it only picks out the essential details in paint. Nothing more, nothing less. And this also feeds into how the figure tricked me into believing it was show accurate for over a week and a half, but like I said, saving that for the end. And then we have my third and final issue, the weaponry. No, not the arm blaster. The arm blaster is awesome. It's well painted, well designed, easy to attach. I love the gunmetal and the orange paint here that make it look as though it's ready to destroy a few Maurices with a few ricochets.
You call shooting a coin a martial art?
Maya, did you let this guy in here? In fact, my only real issue with the arm gun that I haven't mentioned yet is simply the fact that it isn't compatible with traditional War for Cybertron trilogy style blast effects. Even the Cyberverse Deluxes had blast effect compatibility, and their fight scenes never had the spectacle of the Transformers facing off against what was the love child of Howl's Moving Castle and a Metal Gear. Watching this clip, it means that unfortunately YouTube copyright has put the kibosh on my original plan to include a minute-long edit of the final battle scene from Earthspark Season 1A to the song Rules of Nature from Metal Gear Rising. But if you want to see the full minute-long edit, it's currently available on my Patreon for non-patrons, so watch it there for free. However, the problem I have is not with the weapon she comes with, but rather the weapons she doesn't come with. Yes, weapons plural. In the show, these laser wings can detach and turn into swords for her to use, which is awesome. I really like that. However, while you can detach the wings off of her back, and there is a gap between her fingers, that gap ain't actually wide enough to let her hold them as swords. But like I said earlier, this is just a personal nitpick. It's not an outright flaw with the figure, it's just something they didn't include. And I can appreciate the potential reasons for why they didn't include it. Engineering, budget, etc. It's much like with the paint. I would have liked them to include more, but I can kind of understand why they didn't. And with those 3 issues out of the way, let's move on to what I actually like about the robot mode. Starting with the head, because it perfectly captures Twitch's personality. Mostly because she's smiling. You have no idea how rare and refreshing that is. Every Transformer that I can remember since the start of my collecting journey has been an impassable wasteland of furrowed brows and dull surprise. A veritable ocean of unreadable mouthplates and plummy lips. Yeah, that's how homogenized Transformers head sculpts usually are, so seeing one with a bit more naivete is really refreshing. I'm not gonna say that I need every Transformers figure ever from this point onward to smile at me, especially since Lord knows I'd take dull surprise any day of the week over whatever the hell this is supposed to be. But I'd prefer less dull surprise and YouTube thumbnail clickbait gasps. And it's not like she's the only recent example I can pull from. Legacy Dragon Megatron sure ain't smiling.
That is the face of a man who has been rickrolled 10 times today and is not taking it well.
But he's way more expressive than whatever the hell Skids was doing. And before we move on, I'd just like to quickly move up from the mouth to the eyes, which are perfect. They're so expressive and large. And they also share another connection to Dragon Megatron. Not in their shape, because his are squinty and glary, whereas hers are large and vulnerable, but the other connection they share is light piping, and I like light piping. Also, I didn't know where else I could show this in the video, but I really like how they display the connection between Robbie Malto, the older of the Malto siblings, and Twitch. And the way they show that is by having her acclimate to being a Cybertronian more quickly than Thrash. She's the first one who learns to deploy her weapon, person, the first one who learns how to transform at will, and also the first one to learn how to scan in alt mode, which apparently you do by staring at something really, really hard. Give me a second.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to scan the 3D printer so I can make it my alt mode. Then perhaps I might be able to understand why it isn't working.
Go back to filming your review. And on a totally unrelated side note, I'm going to see if I can refill your prescriptions.
Now that my housemate slash sidekick slash assistant slash gremlin that lives under my bed has gotten me back on track, let's go into the articulation. And before we do, I should preface this by saying that some of the joints were pretty loose out of the box and I had to tighten them up with super glue. Fortunately, in the complete inverse of the Armada Starscream that was recently released, I was able to take her apart relatively easily so I could access the joints that needed tightening. Speaking of that gremlin that lives under my bed, take it away, Maya!
In robot mode, Twitch has a ball joint at her neck, wings, engines and shoulders, swivel at the bicep, bend at the elbow, swivel at the waist, ball joint at the hip, swivel at the thigh, bend at the knee, and a hinge and ball joint at the ankle.
Overall, I think the articulation is very solid. There are some minor improvements that could be made, however I think it would be appropriate to get into those after we do our size comparisons. Here's Earthspark Twitch next to Firmhand, RC, Elita 1, RC6, provided that Ab Crunch doesn't manage to bug out on me. Oh, god damn it! Ursi Listerine Edition! No, I'm not being lazy. If the figure can't even bother to transform itself right, then why should I? Override, Road Rocket, Reboost, Star Saber, Victory Leo, the Midget Masters, Leo Prime, the Tacticons, Megatron, and of course, a standard Qtama, standard Cam Sparkling Water, and Broadside. And so before I award the figure its score, I'd like to explain to you how I think it managed to trick me into thinking that it was totally show accurate for over a week. And I think what it comes down to is the compromises that it made. Now, as I stated before, fembots are prone to taking their compromises way, way, way too far, and it often leads to them becoming problems. So many other fembots will treat compromise as a shortcut to achieving the impossible, like turning a bulky muscle car into a svelte swimsuit model. You just can't do it. At least, not without getting super creative, and that's very frequently what fembots fail to do, is be creative about it. They'll end up leaning upon these compromises like a crutch, and one too many leans upon the crutch of compromise can often result in it transforming into the crutch of excuses. However, Earthspark Twitch does not use compromise as a means to make up for the impossible, but rather, it uses compromise to accentuate what it can do. No, neither mode can be 100% show accurate, however, we can adapt the defining features of each mode and find a way to meet in the middle so it looks show accurate. And because she allowed me to put those thoughts to the paper, her score skyrocketed from a 6 out of 10 to an 8.5 out of 10. Is she perfect? No, but is a first attempt ever perfect? And more importantly, if it was perfect on the first shot, then I wouldn't want them to make more. And I want them to make more Twitch figures. I want a warrior class figure that gives her swords, a deluxe generations figure that gives her swords, gun, and improves on the articulation and paint. I want them to make more figures of Twitch. I even want one of those dumb little finger puppets they've made. Those would be adorable. Though perhaps the most important part of this is that Earthspark Twitch did not reach these heights by standing on the shoulders of giants, but rather by standing on her own 2 feet. And this willingness to stand on your own 2 feet encapsulates why I fell in love with Transformers Earthspark and what makes it so damn refreshing. And with that being said, this is Firebite 27, over and out.